Let's look at the menstrual cycle, because you do this really, really well. The hormonal stages, before we move into kind of perimenopause and all the disruption. Can you talk us through those stages? Because I found it, I loved it, the way the manifestation stage, the power phase. Can you talk us through those?
Yeah. So for starters, I wanted to name them in so that women understood what they represent. Because when I first started learning hormones, I was like, follicular, luteal, like it's just confusing. Every woman knows ovulation, but they don't, the names are too technical. So I also like to make everything fun. So I was like, okay, well, the power phase is when our hormones typically are at their lowest. And specifically, the first power phase is day 1 to day 10. And that's when you go from a low hormone place to estrogen building. The reason I call it the power phase is because I wanted women to understand that is the time to power up on anything. You can power up on fasting, you can power up on workouts, you can get away with less sleep, like you are powerful during that time. Like estrogen is very much an extroverted hormone. So she's going to be the life of the party. She's going to be the one that's like, yes, let's go for a 10-mile run. Yes, let's do a 3-day fast. She doesn't care if cortisol goes high. And so that first 10 days of our cycle is when we can lean into some of these health habits that we've accumulated over the years that we know keep our weight where we want it, keep our mind where we want it. You can go into those extreme behaviors day 1 through day 10.
You know, I love that phase. Can I say, like my HRV,
you do?
I'm so resilient right from as soon as my period begins. That's it. Like I feel more resilient. I see it on my trackers, on my HRV. Like you just said there, you can manage with less sleep. And I'm like, yeah, I'm in the green on my Whoop and everything. And then, it kind of shifts later on. But yeah, I love that.
It's so fun to hear you say that, because that is exactly how I have felt over the years. And a lot of women feel, but we never had a language to put to it. So, and I think that might be one of the reasons women are resonating with this book so much, is because now they're finally like understanding themselves. So I love that.
Talking our language.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other thing I just want to point out about these 10 days is this is where you want to keep glucose and insulin low. So women that have PCOS, this is an emerging problem. Like it's the most common hormonal condition for cycling women. And you are going to want to keep insulin down in order to keep those symptoms of PCOS down. So you want to keep glucose down. This is a great time to go keto. This is a great time to push your workouts, to push a little longer fast, do it in those 10 days.
That is super interesting, because on my glucose tracker, and I have PCOS, I was diagnosed with an insulin resistance. So I've been spent the last 20 years trying to manage it. And I noticed that I'm very sensitive. I have to work a bit harder to control my blood glucose at that time. Yeah, for sure.
Crazy, right?
Yeah, this just all lines up. It's amazing.
I know. When I looked at the science and then I matched the science of fasting to the menstrual cycle, and then I took that information, applied it to my patients, I just started to see trends. I started to see things working. With that first power phase, one interesting thing is a lot of my patients that were struggling to get pregnant for years, when I took them through what we're talking about right now, all of a sudden they would get pregnant, because now you're living in accordance with what your hormones want. And those first 10 days, estrogen wants glucose and insulin low. And then, and so how do we go about getting glucose and insulin low? More fasting, more keto, more working out, the aerobic type of working out. That's how we can manage glucose. And it's fascinating once you really dive into what the needs are of each one of these hormones.
And we're stronger at that point, right? If I look at when I'm like lifting the last few weeks, because now I'm kind of just crossed that middle section, I was moving up in my weights. And then when I went this morning, I was like, it's starting to feel a bit harder now. It's so true. Like, it's just, it's like clockwork. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's crazy. So then when we go into the ovulation window, I called it manifestation. And the reason I wanted to call it that is because I think as women, we have villainized our hormones forever. We're like, oh, I'm hormonal today. And we haven't really embraced how these hormones really serve us. And when you look at day 11 to day 15, when an egg is going to be released, you have estrogen at her peak. She's the highest of the whole of your whole cycle. You have testosterone comes roaring in, highest during your cycle. And then you have a little bit of progesterone. So what this means for you is during this strange little 4-day window is that you're going to notice you're mentally clear, because that's what estrogen gives us, that real clarity. You're also verbally, like, I don't know if you've ever had this, maybe as a podcaster, you have those moments where you say something and you're like, hey, that was actually pretty good.
I sounded intelligent.
Yeah, I actually sound like I know what I'm talking about. Yeah. So that's estrogen. She helps you with mental clarity. She gives you verbal processing and verbal skills. But then testosterone gives you motivation and drive. It does a lot more than just libido. And progesterone keeps you get a little bit of progesterone during this time, so it keeps you calm. So yes, you can manifest a baby if you want to during that time, but your creativity is at its height. Your ability to resolve conflict is at its best. You are literally in your hormonal glory during that time. So what lifestyle do we need to match to ovulation? And this is where the research says, keep fasting around 15 to 17 hours. Don't go crazy, because you don't want to bring cortisol up too much, because you've got progesterone there. And you should really focus more on foods. So you're going to want to bring your glucose up a little bit more, and you're going to want to focus on liver and gut health, because one of the part of the conversation of hormones that is not being had is that there's many aspects to be able to use a hormone. You've got to produce it. You've got to be able to break it down, and then your cells have to be able to receive it. So there's 3 steps. Well, when we look at the manifestation phase, this ovulation window, we've got to go, okay, I now have all my hormones coming in. How am I going to support the breakdown and the use of those? And that we can do by switching our attention to the liver and the gut. I think if there was ever a time for us to get off alcohol, it would be during this manifestation phase, because you need your liver to break down estrogen.
To effectively detoxify the excess, right? Because for me, I noticed that this is where I can get breakouts in the middle here.
That's right. Yeah. And if you do, that's a sign that you're not breaking it down as well. Yeah. So your body's pushing it out through your skin. Yeah. So if you get breast tenderness, if you get bloated during that time, that's all a sign that your body's struggling to break these hormones down.
And do you find that's exacerbated in women like me with PCOS, where you've got kind of higher androgens? And
yes. Yeah. So it would behoove you to focus a lot on those 3 Ps that I talk about: the polyphenol, the probiotic, and the prebiotic foods. And really support the liver with bitter foods, arugula, radicchio, dandelion greens. That's what I want women to turn to in that manifestation phase, so we can break those hormones down. Food is going to be more of your tool than fasting during that 4-day window. And then you're going to see that not only are you going to get rid of estrogen, clear it out of your system so it doesn't turn into cancers, and it's also gets recycled out of you. But you're also going to be able to move those into your cells a lot easier, so that you can actually use them for what they were made for.
Amazing.
So, yeah, awesome. So that's the manifestation phase. And then you come out of ovulation or manifestation and your hormones dip again. So the other thing that I really want women to understand is when the hormones come in, we have a certain set of behaviors and personalities that we no pun intended, we flow with as these hormones come in. But then we have moments where the hormones drop. And when the hormones drop, we get a little bit like, I don't feel so good. And it could be mood, it could be energy, it could be sleep. But coming out of like manifestation phase around day 16, we have another drop. And in those drops, you can help yourself by fasting a little more, going into a little more keto. So I called it the power phase 2, because I felt like this is another time you can power up on longer fasts. You can power up on more of your keto diet. It's a great time to go into more of those habits again.
How
But
have you
then,
found most women are feeling during? Because some women will say that they experience that drop, right? And they kind of feel a bit low. There's a blip kind of
there's a blip.
after ovulation.
Yeah.
And other women are like, actually, I'm continuing to feel strong and they can train. And I'm curious what you found with all the women you've worked with and served.
It's such a good point. Of all the phases that I mapped out in the book, that's the one that's the most variable.
Yeah.
So is that if you're struggling to clear estrogen, a lot of women will say they don't feel well in that coming out of ovulation, which is why I think focusing on the liver and the gut is important. So you're clearing that out. Women,
and it could be different month to month, right? Then, so some women feel great one month and then the next month they're
yeah. Right. I mean, and this is what, again, I'm so happy you pointed that out, because these are the conversations we need to have, because there's a lot of women that don't understand themselves. They're shaming themselves. They're frustrated with with why they can't lose weight. They're frustrated with why their moods are going off, when in reality, there's a lifestyle that we need to match to all these different phases of our menstrual cycle. So we
go past manifestation. Yeah, go on.
Yeah.
And
so
then
you
what
come
happens?
out of manifestation, the hormones drop, you can power up on your fast, you can power up on keto. But here's the real like aha of the whole menstrual cycle. And that's that at about day 20, day 19, I called it the nurture phase. Your body is building progesterone and everything has to change at this moment. So if you're looking at your HRV, you probably see your HRV go down at the week before your cycle. If you're looking at your glucose and you have a glucose monitor, you're probably noticing that your glucose is going up despite you're doing the same health habits you did the rest of your cycle. Well, there's a reason for this. Progesterone wants you to chill out. Progesterone wants you to not push your workouts. Don't push your diet habits. You don't push your social calendar. This is a time, that's why I called it the nurture phase. This is the time we need to nurture ourselves. And when we push through that last week before our cycle, we end up coming into the beginning of our cycle with heavy cramping, clots with our menstrual cycle. We struggle the first couple of days of our cycle mentally. All of that is because we didn't nurture ourselves the week before our period. Progesterone needs glucose higher. Progesterone needs cortisol down. Progesterone has a totally different way about her that we just aren't discussing enough.
So in this phase, then, when we're looking at glucose, would we expect to see, like, if you're using a CGM, you'd expect to see it slightly higher, and would that not be something to worry about?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I can't tell you how many women freak out when they put CGMs on and they're like, wait a second, I'm doing the same thing, but glucose is going higher. And this is the thing to like think about, how amazing your body is that your body knows that it needs more glucose to be able to make progesterone. So during that week, it makes you more insulin resistant so that you can bring up glucose levels. You'll see that on your continuous glucose monitor. But what else does it do? It causes us to crave carbs. So how many of us have this insatiable hunger and carb craving before our cycle starts, and we bitch and moan about it? We're like, oh, all I want to do is eat carbs. I can't fast. I don't really feel like working out. I just want to stay home. I want to eat chocolate. Yeah, that's what progesterone is asking. That's what
you're meant to be doing.
Yes.
And that's okay.
Right? Like it's freeing once you know that. It's like crazy. It's crazy that we complain about that. But that's literally what progesterone wants. She wants glucose higher. She wants cortisol low. She needs magnesium from chocolate. So she's giving you these signals, and we've just been blowing through those signals. And then we get all these adverse symptoms, like our cycle is really painful. We feel really bloated, or anxiety ensues. And we don't realize that it's just because we went against progesterone's needs.